Okay, great. So we're starting.
Let's go.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
Again, although we've just said hello to each other like 5 minutes ago, but just for the video. How are
Yeah,
you?
thank you so much for inviting. I'm good, thank you. How are
Thank
you?
you for being here. Great. Really
My pleasure.
excited. I've got my questions, but before I start asking them, could you please introduce yourself? I'm sure that my students know who you are. I'm sure that a lot of people, a lot of my subscribers also know who you are, but yeah, why don't you just say something about yourself, what you do? Yeah.
Okay, sure. I'm certain that some people won't know who I am and they'll be like, who is this? Who is this random English girl? My name's Emma. I run the channel Pronunciation with Emma, and I focus on teaching pronunciation to people who are interested in improving their pronunciation, as simple as that. Whether it's for work, travel, or maybe you've got family that you want to communicate with, that's what I focus on. It's pretty simple. I currently live in Spain, but I'm from the UK.
Great. I envy you, by the way. Living in Spain, my dream. Anyway,
It's very nice. Yeah.
yeah. Have you been doing it for a long time? I mean, teaching pronunciation.
So teaching in general, I've been teaching since I was 16 and I'm 31 now. I started teaching pronunciations more specifically, I would say pretty much after my master's degree. So what's that, 5 years ago? Because it's when I started my channel. I was teaching pronunciation before that, but it wasn't my sole focus. Like I had some students who were doing maybe Cambridge exams, IELTS, general English, conversation. But I always loved the pronunciation lessons the most. And I felt those were the ones I always got the most excited about. So I decided to focus on that more and more and more. And then just as time went on, of course, students, they like come and go. So once the kind of, let's say, general English students dropped off, or the exam students finished their exams and didn't need me anymore, I just started refusing to take on more general English students or exam students, and just said, no, I know another great teacher. Go to this teacher instead. I just do pronunciation. So it was like a phasing out, let's say, and phasing in, focusing more on pronunciation. And yeah, that took a few years because some students, they were with me for ages. And yeah, then they ended up stopping because either time or whatever, they finally finished their exam. So yeah, I've been focusing on pronunciation for a while, but
Right. All right. Let's talk about students then. You did already say it at the beginning, but I still want to ask you this question. Who do you think could need to work on their pronunciation? Because some people might be like, what pronunciation? I mean, well, I'm learning English anyway. Why do I need, pronunciation specific lessons?
yeah, it's something very neglected in the world of teaching, and I don't want to put the full blame on teachers because I think it comes from the lack of teacher training. And, we're not taught in our CELTA about pronunciation. There's a very, very, very heavy focus on grammar and vocabulary. And even if you look in textbooks, there's always like a very short section. It's always like a 10-minute end of the lesson thing to focus on pronunciation. And it's like, how can you focus on connected speech in 10 minutes? Like, it's such a complex topic and you can go so deep into this topic and easily spend an hour. So I think the reason why then students don't give it enough importance is because the teachers don't give it enough importance. I
Right.
think a lot of teachers, they're like, you must study grammar, and that trickles down to the student's mindset. But the kinds of people who I think could benefit from improving their pronunciation are the ones that perhaps lack some confidence when they're speaking. So it could be a case of when they're speaking, people are misunderstanding them and they're getting asked all the time and interrupted, like, sorry, what did you say? Or even worse, I've had students come to me in the past and say, my colleagues don't want to talk to me because they say that they don't understand me, which is so sad, but it is something that happens.
This is something I think, something that it's not talked about enough, also because there is some amount of, taboo kind of thing attached to it, because, talking about how one person is, maybe not discriminated, but still, looked down on because of their accent, for example. We don't talk about this stuff enough, I think, because it's embarrassing to talk about. It's uncomfortable, but it's still something that is a thing, unfortunately, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I always find, like, you can be discriminated against because of the grammar you used. Grammar you use, I should say. There we go, I'm making mistakes. Like, in a general sense, the kind of grammar you use. There are certain dialects, like if you look at African American vernacular English and things like that, or you look at like in the US, if you look at how they speak in Texas, like they don't say you as like a plural you, they'll say y'all. And some people will look at that and completely frown upon it and think, no, this is bad grammar. But actually, if you think about it, it's really convenient. Like, how many times as English speakers have we wanted to use a plural you? Like in the north of England, where I'm from, we do have a plural you. So we have like one you, like singular you, but plural yous. So it'd be like,
wow.
Oh, what are yous doing?
Oh, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's so convenient, because if not, you're having to look at everyone like in the eyes individually and be like, you are all included. Or say you all. But it's like, why say you all when you can say yous?
Native speakers. I mean, native speakers also use, so they speak with different accents, they use different grammar, right? And maybe this is exactly the time that we talk about pronunciation and accent. Would you say there's any difference between teaching or learning an accent, to speak with a certain accent, and like improving your pronunciation?
Mm-hmm. Pronunciation and accent are different things, but they're like sisters. So in order to teach pronunciation, you are teaching a way of speaking. You are teaching an accent. The thing is when you're teaching pronunciation, it's not about trying to replicate a sound exactly in a specific accent. It's just about potentially making that sound a little bit clearer to help distinguish between certain words. So let me think, like sit and seat. Do you know what I mean? There are times where maybe if I pronounce them all as E's, and I say, oh, I want to seat here, or what time do you leave? But leave, actually. Like if I say, when do you leave? But maybe you mistake that for like, where do you live? Or do you know what I mean? Like, there could be cases where it could interfere with how people understand you. And that's when the pronunciation part becomes important. Because if you can distinguish between these sorts of things, then you're easing communication for everyone. You're making it easier for you, and you're making it easier for the other person that you're talking to. That's what language is all about. It's about communication. It's why it was invented. When it comes to accent, I find that if you're wanting to get your pronunciation as close as you can to a certain sound, let's say, then you're focusing more on accent. So that could be, let me think, like saying center instead of center. While, if I say something like, I'm trying to think of something that might not like interfere with understanding. Can't come up with examples today. Should have had another like cup of coffee before this. But yeah,
like
I mean,
using,
if you're trying
using
to
the tap tea or using the normal tea or using
exactly
saying water or water or
that's it exactly.
Water.
Yeah, then you're making choices based on an accent. So if you're choosing to say water instead of water, which sounds like more Australian, you know, that's a choice, and you're making that choice because you're like, oh, that sounds more Australian, I'm choosing that way. So as I said, they are different, but they also really connect. They are sisters. So it's hard to teach one without the other because everyone has an accent. So once a teacher starts teaching pronunciation, no matter what their accent is, like your students are going to use your accent as their model.
Right. Yeah, we talked about it. You know, sorry if I'm interrupting or
no,
but just you know, I just thought about a conversation we had with in what class was it? I don't remember. But okay, it was at a seminar. So I'm doing a master's degree in linguistics now, and we were discussing models basically, because on the one hand we say, so today we talk a lot about you know, the identity of a speaker and how you don't have to learn a specific accent, and probably it's just not possible, but anyway, you know, learning a specific accent and kind of getting rid of your own accent. And we say that, well, this should not be the goal of you know, learning to pronounce words better. The goal should not be getting rid of your own accent, right? And yeah, and we say that, yes, when we teach pronunciation, yes, we do work on, and yeah, we do change our accents. And on the other hand, there has to be a model, whether it's your teacher or it's, I don't know, favorite podcaster or YouTuber that you listen to a lot and you try and imitate how they speak, and you will anyway be working towards a specific accent. You like, it's okay, it's fine. Yeah. But you will also have your own accent that you don't have to get rid of, right?
Yeah, it's a really weird term, saying get rid of your accent, because it's like, to get rid of one accent, you've got to have another accent waiting for you on the other side. So in the end, you're still going to have an accent. But it's interesting. I always find this you should and you shouldn't in the world of teaching like really interesting. Like when people come to me and they say like, oh, I really want to sound like the Queen, as an example, you know, I really want to sound like the Queen. That's my goal. And I will ask them, but why? Why do you want to sound like the Queen? And sometimes it's just a case of they really like that accent. They really do. And they want to imitate it as closely as possible because they just have this deep love for this particular accent. And it would break my heart to turn around to the student and be like, no, but you shouldn't be doing that. Like, that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should be communication. Like, it would break my heart turning around to these sorts of people who have this deep passion. So I think it's a case of like, maybe it's the should that's the problem here. Maybe it should be something more like, think about why you want to do it.
Yeah.
Because if it is a case of, oh, well, it's because I should sound like a native speaker, like, I think that's when the should be used. God, this is getting confusing. Then it might help the students to reflect a little bit if you're like, well, why do you believe you should sound like a native speaker if you don't want to? Why do you want to sound like the Queen if you don't actually want to?
I really like this thought about, should and shouldn't maybe not being the right words.
It puts like pressure, like an expectation.
Yeah.
But I want to sound like the Queen. I like how maybe not the Queen. She's past right now, but let's say an actress or something like that. And one of my students really likes Benedict Cumberbatch. He really wants to sound like Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm like, bro, it's like the hardest accent. Not even native speakers understand it. But he loves Benedict Cumberbatch. Who can sit and tell my student, like, no, but you shouldn't. You should sound Polish when you speak English. No, he doesn't want to. He wants to sound like Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I love
there's
it. I love it.
it's like-
I love this idea. Really.
yeah.
Thank you for it.
Maybe it will give people another perspective, because I think some
Yeah.
people they do put these like shoulds in the world of teaching, and I think it's just a case of, well, what do our students want?
Yeah, just focus too much on kind of rules. Oh, that reminds me of what I've been working on with my therapist. You know, that I'm the kind of person who always wants to follow the rules. Please tell me what should and what I should not do. But then you just grow up and realize that there's always room for negotiating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Then shall we move on to the next one? Yeah. How do you teach it? How do you teach pronunciation? Any specific methods or techniques that you use?
It depends on the student. There are some students where we may have to focus on a specific sound just for that 1 hour or just for maybe not even an hour. Sometimes it like it and E. Sometimes students can get one of the sounds, but they're confusing it and creating like an equivalent. So it might be worth kind of killing two birds with one stone and doing a lesson with two sounds, or with the and da, instead of saying this and this. Do you know what I mean? Like comparing those two. So it really does depend on the student. There are students who they know how to pronounce the sounds, but then once they start speaking, they're slipping up. They're making some mistakes because they're kind of thinking, what do I say next? They're thinking about the grammar and the vocabulary, and then their pronunciation takes a back seat, and then they end up making some, minor mistakes that might impede on the understanding. And I need to step in and say, oh no, it's be careful how you say sheet there, and like correct the student. But it really does depend. There are some students who just love reading a story with me and just practicing and shadowing with me. There are times where we play games together and do exercises and things like that. So if there are any teachers who are listening and they really want to start teaching pronunciation, but they've got no idea what kinds of materials to use because textbooks are useless for pronunciation, there's a really good series. Oh, let me find the name. It's by a really famous guy in like the pronunciation world. Now I can't remember his name. It's Mark Hancock. Mark Hancock. He has released a series of books, and I'm just trying to find the name of them. I think they're called Pron Pack. Yeah, they're called Pron, like short for pronunciation, Pron Pack. Yeah. And he does different ones, like based on distinguishing sounds, stress, ones with songs, I think. And then there are also 2 packs which are dedicated to Spanish speakers and Portuguese speakers, but I think it's Brazilian Portuguese speakers. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that and send me hate and be like, no, it's for Portuguese speakers, because I don't remember. But they're great. They're great packs. And he used to do this,
I'll have a look
this
too.
book. I love them. Like if I'm not too sure what to do in a session, but I know my students need to practice something specific, I'll be like, Prawn Pack. And there's something. Or there's pronunciation games, which he had. I think it was like made in like the 90s. Book is probably older than me. But yeah, he also has that. So you could probably find a very old copy of that somewhere for much cheaper.
I've got just one more question. do you go, because I know two kinds of teachers, pronunciation teachers. So one type, they go with play more. So they choose imitation and play as the main method, instead of, so they don't explain, for example, how the mouth works, and they go with some kind of, body movements or this kind of thing. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. And there's another type of, again, pronunciation teachers who go with explaining where you put your tongue and how how you open your mouth and how you use your lips. So which one are you?
I would say I lean more towards the second one, but it does depend on the student, because there are students I've had in the past where I've been describing like the mouth position, and they're just not getting it. Like they just they have no idea what's going on inside their mouth. So that if I'm telling them, no, put it here, and I show them a diagram, and they're still not getting it.
It's like yoga, right? Or Pilates. Like you have to really feel the muscle and understand like where the leg goes, so that this exact muscle works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. That's a really good way to think of it. It is hard
for some people.
It is. It depends on a few factors. Like it depends on their first language or languages. Depends on other languages they know. It depends as well on their confidence, because sometimes sitting around for an hour and making noises and having someone staring intensively at your mouth is really intimidating and distracting. So they can become like really tense in the lessons.
Self-conscious.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what am I doing?
Yeah, especially if it's like a face-to-face lesson. I'm like, let me see inside your mouth. Where is your tongue position? With those sorts of students, if they're not quite getting it from the explanations, because I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to be like, right, you don't understand it, get out. That's not me. Not that brutal. I will use other methods. Like I won't be dancing around or anything like that, but I will use ways to get them to move their mouths in a certain way that will help make the sound click a bit better. So for example, I might tell them, oh, I want you to imagine that you've seen a really, really cute little dog, right? There's a cute little puppy dog. What noise do you make when you see a puppy dog? You go, oh. Now that sound is the sound you need. More. And it will be a way to like teach them that by giving it a bit of like a story or something. And that also helps. But I mean, I'm not like using interpretive dance or anything. I don't have the space in an online lesson. Be like bashing my plants around. But
do you use their first language then? Do you somehow, if you know the same, if you are a speaker of the language that they speak as their native language, do you somehow use it?
For sure. Yeah, I do. So every few years, I learn a new language, and it's so I can do exactly this.
How many do you speak now?
It's always a hard question to answer. It's like, how many do I speak? Because like once I learn a language, I will not touch that language again, and I'll move on.
How many can you use in some way? And reading is using as well.
Ooh. Well, Portuguese, I can still read and understand Portuguese, but to speak it, like, it's just gone.
Yeah.
And I sound very Spanish.
You're a user, not a speaker.
Yeah. Like, I just sound very Spanish when I speak Portuguese because... yeah, I get like a bit confused. Spanish, I can speak, no problem. It's the language I'm most fluent in besides English. With that, what else? So yeah, I mentioned Portuguese. I can read and understand that. And if I really put my mind to it, I could probably write it, but I might need a bit of help with the spelling.
ChatGPT?
Yeah. Please translate this to Portuguese. Catalan, because I live in Catalonia, I understand it. I cannot, I don't want to say I cannot speak it. Like I can, but again sound very Spanish.
Yeah.
Like I've not put much effort into the pronunciation there. As a pronunciation teacher, you'd think I would be into it, but no, I put a lot of
is
pronunciation.
perfect.
No, exactly. I put a lot of effort though into Spanish pronunciation, so
Yeah.
I really focused on that. But I used to learn French. I did that for a while. That was new because I was using sounds like back here, you know, in the back of my throat. German as well was the same. I really enjoyed German pronunciation because it was so similar to English. So I was like, ooh, I feel it's a bit of a cheat, like a bit of a hack here. But now I'm learning Japanese. And with some of my Japanese students, like, I'm trying to think that one thing that Japanese learners or Japanese speakers tend to have problems with is the na at the end of words. Because in Japanese, what they do is they'll pronounce it like either at the back, like ng. So that's why words like pen can sometimes sound like ping with a ng. Just because it's a bit easier for them and it's what they do in Japanese. So I'll have to say, no, this is like the na sound in nori or something like that. And then they're like, yeah, okay, I've got it. So you can kind of cheat a little bit and piggyback off learners' first languages or languages they know.
Yeah, use the sounds they have in their native
Yeah.
languages to teach the sounds of the English language, right?
It's what I did when I was learning, like when I was first learning Japanese, they have 5 vowels, a, e, I, o, u, which are the same ones in Spanish. And I was like, amazing. I'm going to cheat and use these 5 vowels in Spanish and in Japanese.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it works.
Okay, nice. We've got 3 questions left. Do you agree that there's a native speaker? Oh, okay. This is.
Good question.
It's
the meaty ones.
Yeah. All right. Do you agree that there's native speaker bias in the field of English language teaching and learning? If yes, then how do you understand it?
For sure, there's a native speaker bias. How do I understand it, though? What do you mean by the question? How do I understand
what is it? What is it? Could you explain what it is? Because a lot of people who are watching this right now, I'm sure they will be like, oh, what is that?
Yeah. So a native speaker bias, well, if we just look at the word bias, it's like a preference or thinking that something's better. So if you have a native speaker bias, it's your belief that native speakers are better. In the sense of like maybe they're better teachers, which certainly isn't the case. I think teachers make better teachers. People who are not qualified make terrible teachers. So yeah, there are some people who have this belief that native speakers make better teachers in the field of like pronunciation, the area of pronunciation. Some people think they make better models. And some non-native teachers think, well, I can't teach pronunciation because I don't sound like the Queen. I don't sound like a native, which is rubbish because that's like me as someone from Yorkshire saying I shouldn't teach pronunciation because I don't have an RP accent. Like that's what you're saying is because I don't sound RP, for example, you know, for anyone listening, RP stands for received pronunciation. It's like the standard accent that's taught in the UK. It's what, you know, the royal family speak, the BBC. It was called BBC
this is
accent at one point.
This is what I was taught at university as well.
Yeah. And I always find it just... When you start saying things like, oh, I can't teach because I don't have an English accent or an RP accent, you're basically saying that anyone who doesn't have an RP accent shouldn't teach, which is absolutely rubbish because 2 to 3% of people speak with an RP accent, like natively, let's say.
Yeah.
Well, not even natively, they probably learned it, you know,
Right.
but like through accent training. But it's not a common accent at all. So yeah, don't let it stop you. I have
Nice.
Yorkshire influences, and some people comment on those as well. They're like, why do you say bath instead of bath?
Yeah.
And some people are like, you're not even a native speaker because you say bath. It's like, hold on, this is an accent thing because I'm from the north. So it becomes a teaching point, you know, because people are just not exposed to it.
Yeah, well, you do, of course, need a lot of knowledge to teach pronunciation, but I mean, to teach anything, you do need, content specific knowledge, and that's fine. And I feel like, you know, that this native speaker bias can be found, as you said, on all levels. It can be found on the level of, on the institutional level. I've got a story. So I know someone who is not a native English speaker, but she has great pronunciation, and she applied for a job in private English school in Spain, and they said, "We're hiring you, but just don't tell anyone you're not a native speaker." And they basically told parents that, you know, we've got a native speaker in our school. And this is really bad. This is really bad, I think. And so on the institutional level, but it's also on the level of learners or their parents, who also think for some reason that, well, I do understand why, but anyway, they think that native speakers are better teachers, which, as you said, is not always the case. You do need a lot of knowledge. Knowing the language, unfortunately, that's also something that I've had a lot. When people say, well, you know, to teach the language, you just need to know the language. And I'm like, no, that's not enough, you know. You need a lot of training to be able to teach the language. It's not something you can that can, you know, be done just like that. And you do need a lot of knowledge about the methods of teaching, the knowledge about the language, how the language functions. So, and, you know, not every native speaker teacher has this knowledge. Some, of course, do. Some don't. And on the other hand, non-native speakers, again, they may have great knowledge about different methods of teaching, and also language knowledge, and they may even speak in a way that makes someone else think they are maybe native speakers, maybe not, I don't know, right? So teachers come in all shapes and colors, and
shapes and colors. Shapes, colours and sizes, yeah.
Right.
I like that. Describing teachers like that. It's so funny.
So, colours. Why colours? Anyway.
That's funny. But that happens
Which is
a
true
lot.
as well. I mean...
But this story, I mean, there are stories I've been told by like friends of mine or friends of friends, or I've just read online, where non-natives have found out that they're being paid less than their native speaker colleagues, even though they have like more experience. And it's like, it's so crazy that literally just because of their passport, do you know what I mean? Or where they were born, they were paid less. I mean, there are even cases where, where were they from? Was it South Africa or was it New Zealand? I think that, I can't remember where they were from, whether it was South Africa or New Zealand, but I think it was South Africa. So this teacher was from South Africa, and they were paid less despite being a native speaker of English, because they didn't have a passport from the US or from the UK.
Yeah.
So even being a native speaker, you're still discriminated against just because you don't have the right passport.
Right. And this is something we talked about before. Not having the right passport, or not having the right accent, like native speaker accent, but still not the standard British, not standard American, or I think it's called general American, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, it gets deep and it can get very dark very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people with similar experience, very similar backgrounds, similar qualifications, but one of the teachers was paid less just because she was black, and because she didn't look English.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, and that was in China.
Okay.
So yeah, it wasn't in Spain. It was that was in China. So yeah, I've heard stories like that. I've heard stories of like teachers being shut in broom cupboards while inspectors were going round, and hiding the non-native teachers from parents'
My
evenings
goodness.
and stuff like that. Oh yeah, it's a dark industry. It really is. I see. So going back to like the lighter stuff, the non-native, the native speaker bias. Like I can see why they have that belief, but they've got to think, would they rather have a teacher with 10 years of experience from Spain, let's say, 10 years of experience, they're qualified, they have a master's degree in teaching, their students love them, they're always happy, or a native that's just, finished university and they're wanting to backpack around Spain for a year? Like, I would choose the teacher for sure. But unfortunately, especially in Spain, because it's like a marketing thing. It's purely marketing, just so they can put banners outside their schools saying we have native teachers. Then they can charge more. That's literally it. It's all marketing. It's sad.
Yeah, well, hopefully, after watching this video, more of my subscribers will be able to notice such marketing techniques.
Yeah, it's just so they can charge you more. That's it. Just so they can charge you more and get more students in. It's literally marketing. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Then. Okay, I've got 2 questions left, and those questions I think will be of special interest to everyone who's watching this video now. And one of them is working on pronunciation hard? How much time do I need? How much do I need to invest in it? What would you say? I mean, you've also worked on your own pronunciation in Spanish, so you can probably talk about it both from the point of view of the teacher and the learner.
When it comes to pronunciation, I think a lot of students, they think of it as like grammar. So what I mean by that is grammar is very easy to progress with and very easily trackable, let's say. Like, you know present simple, and if you don't know present simple, it's very easy to track. And when you're using it and when you're not. And there's like a very clear structure. Once you've learned present simple, you learn present continuous, then you learn past simple, and then present perfect, and da. And it's very linear, is grammar. But when it comes to pronunciation, it's not so linear, because what is a difficult sound for some learners may be super easy for others, depending on your first language or depending on like your confidence in the classroom and stuff like that. So it's tricky from that point of aspect. I'm confused 2 things there. From that aspect, or from that point of view, if I still want to use those 2. So the good thing about pronunciation is that I feel you can practice it anywhere. It's one of those things where I always advise people, if they've got little pockets of time, I call them, to, oh my God, my brain's gone to Spanish. I want to say aprovechar, to take advantage of those times. Like, for example, let's imagine you're in the shower, okay? And you're washing your hair in the shower. You can't like study grammar, right?
Yeah.
But you can practice a sound. Or when you're like washing your hands and you're looking in the mirror, you can practice a sound.
This is literally what I did a lot. When I was working on my pronunciation in English. But for me, it was during walks.
Same.
I would just
walk and
walk
be like,
and
"Ba, ba,
repeat
ba, ba."
the same sound or the same word or the same sentence, like a very short sentence with the target sounds or the target whatever, like rhythm, can be anything, intonation, but I would just walk and repeat it again and again and again and again, like
Yeah. I do exactly the same. And sometimes as well, like I find I'm doing it like even like on the bus. I was like yesterday, I was like, what was I trying to say? So there's a town not too far from Barcelona called, and I really struggle with the pronunciation, it's called Manresa. Okay. And I really struggle with the na and ra coming straight after. So I'd say Manresa is really hard. I've really got to think. So I was literally sitting on the train and I was just like, mare. And people around me must have been like, what is wrong with this girl? This weird English girl like making noises.
I wonder whether we sound a bit too obsessed with pronunciation, but I mean, you don't have to be to just you just need a little bit of interest and curiosity, right? To do that.
And what's the difference between like practicing your pronunciation like for 2 seconds as you're walking to the shop and listening to a podcast to practice your listening? Like there's no difference. You know, I don't see anyone being called like obsessed with podcasts and it being like a bad thing, because I was listening to like
some
English
people
podcasts.
do, but yeah.
Oh, for sure. There'll be some podcast haters out there for sure. But I think it's something that you could really practice just in little pockets of time. You definitely don't need to sit and dedicate like a solid hour, you know, to doing it.
Unless you want to.
Unless you want to, yeah. I always find though, like I tend to compare working on pronunciation to going to the gym. Like, is it better? Let's imagine I want to get my summer body and I want a 6-pack, right? Is it better for me to go to the gym 1 hour a week and train hard? Or is it better for me to go to the gym like 20 minutes a day, for example? 20 minutes a day, I go to the gym and I just do a little bit. Like what would be better? What would help me get my beach bod faster? I think it would be the 20-minute gym sesh. Maybe definitely. A bit longer in the gym, but I'm using it for pronunciation. So if you're practicing pronunciation, you're training those muscles just a little bit every day, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long you can you can stand it for. That'll be better than just doing it like a solid hour on a Sunday night when you're like, oh crap, I've not done anything, and you're like panicking.
And I've already got crabs in my cheeks.
Yeah. After like 10 minutes, you're like, I can't smile anymore. I can't do the smiley sounds. Yeah. So it's so easy. Like, people have no excuse when you're like driving to work. Just one thing I really like to do, this is like a little tip. I don't know if you've done this as well with languages you're learning, is when I'm like listening to a podcast or I'm listening to people around me, I will just imitate like little words and sounds.
All the time, yes. Yeah.
So I'm just like listening and I don't know, they'll say something like, I don't know, like, oh, I'm going to the shop, and I'll be like, shop.
Yeah.
I'm just like practicing.
That's me.
Yeah.
That's literally me. Yeah. It's funny. It's also funny how, for example, you and me, how we simultaneously, but also independently, come up with the same, techniques of. Yeah. It's interesting how where do they come from? Like how do they emerge?
I think it's almost like, my theory is that it's something like innate in us, because as children, when we listen to our parents, we're like, shop. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're copying our parents. And I think we do that even as adults. There's like something innate in us. So when we're listening to a model, we're listening to a podcast, and then,
Yeah.
we want to repeat because it's what we did innately as children. I wonder if there's something there in like our brains that makes us do it.
But also, yeah, maybe it's something that we do naturally. I mean, you and me. But if someone who's listening, or watching this video, then if you're not doing it, you can also maybe try it. Maybe it's not something that came natural to you, but you know, you can try.
I must say, like pronunciation, like Spanish pronunciation, isn't something that I do every single day. It seems to be like if I have a particular sound I find difficult, like this Manresa. Oh, it's so hard. I hope I never have to go there, because if I have to ask for like a train ticket, I will just be like, oh, sorry, I'm going to use the machines. Just like avoid it. But yeah, it tends to be just whenever I have a difficult.
Mine was
the ha.
The sound in
Spanish.
Hello. No, in Spanish.
Yeah. That took me 3 months to learn.
Yeah.
3 months. Yeah, and I was practicing
really
that
hard.
nearly every day, because I remember I remember thinking like, I really want to get this right.
Yeah.
So again, we're going back to like, but should I? No, you shouldn't be trying to get it right. But I wanted to.
But I want to.
Yeah. Oh, God, I remember practicing that. I remember like getting like a big ball of spit in my mouth and like kind of pushing it back. I like trying to like almost gargle on the spit to get the h sound. Oh my gosh. I still remember the day I got that h. I said, what did I say? It was naranja, which means orange. Yeah. And I was like, naranja, and jamon, which is like a type of ham. Yeah, I was like, come on. I did it. Oh my God. It was like all my birthdays and Christmases had come at once when I said that sound. But now it's like 10 years later, it's just a completely normal sound to me. It's like, how can I not say that sound?
Yeah.
Just becomes so natural.
It's just a skill. It's a skill you learn, and at some point you don't have to think about it anymore. With the way I speak as well, I don't have to think about it anymore. I know it's not, perfectly native. I'm not a native English speaker, so why should it be? But the way I speak, it's completely natural. I don't really have to control the way I speak, which is in the end, I think, what a lot of people strive for. They just want to feel natural, but also feel that, this is just the way I speak, and I like it. I like the way I speak, and yeah.
And that's it. And if you don't like it, don't listen to me. It's as simple as that.
Right. All right. I have one last question, which is, if someone is just starting out, so they've never worked on their pronunciation, and they've just, listened to us talking for an hour almost, and they thought, well, sounds interesting, but where do I start? What would you say?
Well, I would do a cheeky self promo, but I won't do that.
But you can.
But I do, or if I'm allowed to,
Yeah,
I
sure.
do have a free pack that I give to anyone who wants it. And it takes you through this technique that I call fishing. So this is something you could do without the pack, okay? It's just like, if you want the pack, it's there. You definitely don't have to. But what you can do is, firstly, determine if there are any sounds that you have particular difficulty with. Like for me, when I first started learning Spanish, it was the h sound. Strangely, I was fine with the r, but that's because as a child, I used to like play with sounds and things like that. So I could do that. But h was a big one. So I knew that that's something I had to focus on. And what we do as humans is we try to avoid things that are difficult. So at first I remember thinking like, no, I'm not going to try and learn this. I can get away with just saying like the English equivalent. But then as time went on, like some months went by, and I thought, no, a lot of words have this h sound in, like I can't avoid it. Like Manresa, I can avoid saying that, but h, I can't avoid. So really try to approach a sound or something that you have difficulty pronouncing with, how do I put this? don't go into it thinking this sound is difficult, I can't do it. Because if you go into this with that mindset, as with anything in life actually, you're already putting like a hurdle in front of you. In other words, what I'm trying to say is you're already putting a barrier and making it a bit harder by mentally telling yourself this is hard. So if you look at this as more like, oh, I'm just having fun making sounds, right? And see it as more of like playtime, okay? Use it as an excuse to like play around, explore with making sounds. It will seem a lot less intimidating. When it comes to the fishing, so this is if you don't really know quite what you have any problems with. Maybe you've been speaking English for quite a few years and you're like, well, people understand me from time to time. Maybe they say something like, oh, what did you say? And clearly there's something there, but I don't know what it is. What you can do is find a model. Okay, so what I mean by a model is someone whose accent you like and you like the way they speak. It can be anyone, okay? Go on YouTube, find a video of them talking and record, okay? Set a device recording. It can be like WhatsApp or something. Just like start audio, audio message recording. What is it? Voice note. That's it. Like a voice note recording on WhatsApp. And play the video, pause, and you repeat. So maybe it's saying I'm just going to read your questions, but it'll say something like, I don't know, the person saying, is working on your pronunciation hard, pause. Then you say, is working on your pronunciation hard, pause. Then the actor will continue. How much time and effort does it take? Pause. Then you say. So basically what you're doing is shadowing, okay? Yeah. But you're doing like a delayed shadow.
All right.
So when you've done maybe like a minute, doesn't have to be very long, okay? But actually the shorter is the better because it takes a long time. Pause the audio, like stop the audio recording. Then go back and listen and try and see how similar your pronunciation is to the model. So you're not aiming for absolutely the same recording. You know, you're not trying to make yours sound exactly the same as the model, but you may be able to pick up things. So for example, maybe the model says, is working on your pronunciation hard? But you're saying, is working on your pronunciation hard? And you're like, oh yeah, I say working instead of working. So I need to work on this sound a little bit because people might misunderstand me. And then you start looking at this sound and you practice that and so on. So that's a really good way to get started, is by fishing for I don't want to say mistakes, but fishing for things that you want to change. Because you may say something like, is working on your pronunciation? And you're saying ra, and you may be like, you know, I'm fine with that. But I'm fine with saying working. People understand me. And you pick and choose what you want to fish, what you want to change and work on.
Right. Would you say, one more question. Would you
fine.
say that it's also beneficial to look for a teacher? Or would you say that pronunciation is something that you can work, that you can improve on your own?
For sure, it's something you can do by yourself. There are techniques to correct yourself. The main thing is if you feel that you have a good ear and you can correct yourself and you can hear differences, then you're fine doing it by yourself. But if you feel like, I can't quite distinguish certain sounds, I can't tell if I'm doing it the same way.
Yeah. Or I can hear that these two sentences, they sound different, but I don't know what exactly is different. I don't know why.
Yeah. Like I once had a student say to me, like, they were a Spanish speaker. So their duh sound in Spanish is dental. So they were saying things like du. And I was saying like, no, it's not dental. Don't touch your teeth. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, move your tongue back. Of course, I was explaining it in more detail. I'm not going to go into like a full lesson. I was like, oh yeah, you got to move it back, blah, blah, blah. And then they did it and they were like, do. I was like, that's it. That's how you say it. And they just never realized like that difference between do and do, because it's so subtle. It's like, what is that? Like half
Yeah.
a centimeter movement.
Yeah. And you
But that
don't
changed
generally
it.
think where your tongue is while you're
Yeah.
pronouncing a certain sound.
Exactly.
That's not the
Yeah.
kind of knowledge you grew up with.
Yeah. So having a teacher sometimes, like if you really can't hear, like, but why is it different? What are they doing? Having someone like a teacher can help point out those sorts of things and show you how to do it in the way that you want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big help.
Yeah. Great. Is there anything else you would like to say? I don't know. Again, promote your own services if you want to, or
No, I always feel bad coming on like, yes, come, come to me.
Come on.
No, but if people are interested in improving their pronunciation, they're very welcome to follow me on social media. My socials are Pronunciation with Emma, very simple. I'm Pronunciation with Emma everywhere, so you can find me on any platform. But my main platforms are Instagram and YouTube. And if you're interested in the free pronunciation pack, you're very welcome to download that and get fishing. And inside the pronunciation pack, there's also a story in there, so you can practice shadowing. I mean, we didn't really touch on shadowing too much, but that's a really great way to improve your pronunciation, is using stories. So that's a nice little introduction. If you like it, then you can find some books and things or stories on YouTube. There's so many free things out there, I think. If you want to get started. So, yes.
Great.
That's
Yeah.
me.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for sharing your experience and your knowledge with me,
My
with
pleasure.
us, with everyone. Yeah, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah.
And have a lovely day.
Have a lovely day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.